What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Insight motherfucking 11, man. Got another powerful video for you today talking about look at the experiences you generated. Assess your likes and dislikes, then modify the mental pattern or clear out the energies that are associated with that mental pattern. This way, you can come at life from a much more clearer point of view, a clearer standpoint. This way, you can view reality from an all possibility perspective versus, cluttering the mind with a bunch of thoughts and feelings about pondering about how reality should go based upon a pre-programmed frame of reference that a person will use to create their reality, which is 99% of the times something that's been given to them, something that comes from a space of trauma, something that comes from a space of incapability, something that comes from a space of insecurity and stuff like that. So a person will create all types of, thoughts and feelings that are pre-constructed, shit that's synthetic for them, that a person will use as a frame of reference to create their reality and shit like that, versus a person just being open, versus a person just clearing out their energies. So this way a person can come at reality from a much more open standpoint, where a person is not prejudging things. Because here's the thing, people will overthink in their mind about experiences and shit like that, right? Where it's like people will just create thoughts and feelings without actually experiencing the situation itself and stuff like that. Oh, what does this person think of me? Oh, this person probably looks at me this way. Oh, but I think of myself like this. But here's the thing though, right? That's already like creating bastard thoughts. That's already creating like bastard feelings, where these things are not necessarily come from a space of purity. Because people are creating like pre-configured thoughts, pre-configured feelings that they hold on to and shit like that, and then they bring these things together to create a point of view about reality. Because remember, the mind is just operating based upon a spectrum and shit like that. The mind is just operating based upon a spectrum of energies and shit like that, right? But a lot of the times, a person can be programmed, running based upon a program that's subconsciously running. So whatever is bubbling up in the conscious of their mind, as far as thoughts and feelings, that a person doesn't know how to operate without or get out of as a program. Because a lot of the times when you're growing up as a child, you're going to be psychologically conditioned based upon your environment and shit like that, based upon your family and stuff like that, to take on certain ways of thinking, certain ways of feeling. And then if you don't, because here's the thing, right? Children are naturally beautiful because children are authentic. Children are pure. Children are just naturally curious. Children don't necessarily care about, the what's already being pre-constructed in the world as far as a way of life. A child will just kind of do whatever they do and enjoy and have fun. But once a person becomes an adult and shit like that, they start to like solidify, and that's normal and shit like that. But that's the thing though, right? You don't want to normalize something that generates an experience that you don't like. So if a person is generating an experience that they dislike, then a person really has to sit back and really look at their mentality, the spectrum of thoughts and feelings that they're in, that even generates that experience in the first place and shit like that, right? Because if a person dislikes the experiences that they're generating, if a person comes up with thoughts and feelings to the point that, oh, they hate their life, they dislike their job, they don't like their partner, they hate their relationship, or whatever a person hates and dislikes, then it's like, what is it in the first place that got a person to that point? Because for you to get to point B, you have to first start from point A and stuff like that, right? But who the fuck even gave you point A? Who the fuck told you to even go to point B? Who the fuck even told you to take that trajectory and go down that route to even have these experiences and shit like that? You get me? So it's like, if a person doesn't like the experiences they're generating, it all starts from a mental pattern. It all starts with really looking at that mental spectrum. Because here's the thing, the seen reality, what we experience visibly, as far as co-creating that reality with external people, places, and things and shit like that, right, always comes from an internal mentality and stuff like that, right? That's why science tells you, like, oh, the world came from the unseen realm, blah, blah, blah. They just mean shit that's lighter in density. So what's lighter in density? Thoughts and feelings is things that's lighter in density, lighter in mass. But these things that are lighter in mass, these fluids, these substances that we interact with, that a person may be programmed with and shit like that, where it's like it's kind of like the Matrix, where a person is like plugged into all types of like channels, all types of like things that their mind is engaged with subconsciously, that a person doesn't necessarily take the time to do the shadow work on and clear out and shit like that, right? A person will use these things and play out that reality, but a person may not really know that they're already, their mind's already in the matrix and they're already connected to a bunch of shit that other people have connected them to and shit like that, right? Just based upon the influences that be in the environment around us and shit like that, right? So once a person realizes, oh shit, I'm already connected to, someone made me connect to a version of reality that's not necessarily the version that I wanted to create and stuff like that, right? Because it's like you see everyone around you experiencing a version of reality, right? But what got them to that version of reality was just some shit that was based upon their mentality and shit like that, right? So it's like, and so it's like you can experience anything you want to, you can have anything you want to and shit like that, but it all starts with the mentality itself, because we all have access to these energies and shit like that. Everyone has access to all possibilities god. Everyone has access to, you know, shadow work and shit like that, right? Everyone can work on themselves, right? But a person can't be lazy and not work on themselves and expect, you know, for something outside of them externally to come save their life for them, because that's just never gonna happen, right? Where that's just a form of like kind of witchcraft in a way, where a person just is thought to give their is someone has to teach you to give away your power to something outside of you, where a person is indoctrinated, because that's not, because children don't have that behavior where they give their power to something outside of them. No, a child is just having fun. A child is just curious. A child is just enjoying themselves. But a lot of the times, our joy is just taken away from us, because, you know, a person will indoctrinate you, tell you, hey, your power is outside of you. Hey, you know, believe in the government. Hey, believe in this God outside of you, or, you know, whatever a person might tell you. But it's all just forms of disempowerment. That's why a person gotta be really careful what they give their faith, belief, and imagination to. Because if you give your faith, belief, and imagination to something outside of you, then even down to even like a school degree, right? If a person believes like they have to get the school degree, and if they don't, this means that they're not worth anything. Because a lot of people base their self-worth, base their value based upon external things, external validations. But look, for who even created that degree, right? And who even created that school system, and what did they validate themselves on to even create that school system and shit like that, right? Where did they get that sense of value to even provide you with value? So that lets you know a person has to become valuable themselves to share value with the world and shit like that, right? So it's like the only reason people generate experiences that they don't necessarily like is because they have faith, belief, and imagination in a mentality that doesn't lead to the experiences that they actually would like to experience. So a person like this might see someone next to them having an experience that they want to experience, but they don't have the faith, belief, and the imagination in themselves to go about and generate that experience and shit like that, right? So it's like a person really got to sit back, look at, okay, what's going on within my mind? And 99% of the times, a person knows what they're insecure about. A person knows what, you know, what they view themselves as incapable or unable to do. But here's the thing: all these things, all these collections of thoughts and feelings, this is an accumulation, right? A combination, and that creates a mental delusion and stuff like that. Because a mind is just a mind. Everyone has access to the logical faculty. Everyone has access to the practical faculty. Everyone has access to the imaginative faculty. Everyone has access to the heart chakra, the root chakra, and all these different things. Shit like that. You know, everyone has access to anger and aggression and passion and shit like that. But not everyone is going to use these things in a way to actually be constructive. A lot of the times people will use these faculties in a way to be destructive and shit like that, right? The point that a person will get lost in something outside of them that will destroy them based upon escapism energy, trying to escape something that's going on inside of them, not dealing with whatever it is that's going on inside of them and shit like that, right? Like, that's why a person might smoke 1,000 cigarettes, take 1,000 shots at the bar. So you have a lot of these rappers dying at random places and shit like that, because they're not really looking at what's going on inside of them and shit like that. That's leading them to have a relationship with that external thing, that substance like that. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like people have relationships with their thoughts and feelings and shit like that, because these be like characters running in their mind. That's why the Greeks was creating like these mythologies and shit like that. Where I think it was like one example, but don't quote me on this, but it is some Greek theology and shit like that, right? Or mythology, however you want to put it. Where I think Kronos' head was split open, and Zeus was born from that, or shit like that, right? It's like the same thing with people. It's like you give birth to experiences, situations from your mind and shit like that, right? Where you co-create with these thoughts and feelings attract other people, places, and things that resonate with these thoughts and feelings to fulfill these things, right? So if a person believes they are a victim of their life, that they have no power whatsoever, then a person will attract someone else who believes in the complete polar shift opposite, a user abuser, and both these two people will come together and fulfill a circumstance situation, and then it's like that, because it's like it takes two to tango and shit like that, right? Because no one can do anything to you unless a person allows these things to be done to them and shit like that, right? So it's like I said, if a person is generating experiences that they don't like, if a person is generating, just situations that they don't want to be in, if a person is in a relationship that they don't like, if a person is in a job they don't like, right? First, it's the starting point that got us there in the first place, right? And then we got to understand that since our mentality has already solidified, since our mind has already solidified and shit like that, right? These things take time to change, because whatever a person accumulated, that's going to be a culmination of something that they carry inside of them as a mini space and stuff like that. Where this is how you even get a person talking about, I have a demon, or whatever it is a person has inside of them that causes them to be internally conflicted about, going for that experience or going for that reality that they actually want to experience and stuff like that, right? So it's like a person really got to sit back and look at, why do they even have a relationship with these thoughts and feelings, with these mentalities and stuff like that? Really, really, really clear out these energies and shit like that. This way a person doesn't have to jump into that realm of reality outside of them, or even because whatever energy you in, whatever space you in, that's going to be the reality that a person generates, whether they like it or not. Because if a person is angry and pissed off, they're going to take that energy subconsciously, point that to something outside of them, and create a catastrophic situation. And anger is a very powerful energy, but I'm going to get into that later because it was something else that I wanted to get into. But yeah, it's like, don't worry about the external thing that a person may have manifested, because you got to understand that as much as time you put into something, you have to put that time in to get out of that and shit like that, right? So a person may have created the circumstance situation already where they're at a job they don't like, or they have a relationship with a partner or a wife that they don't like, and or a woman or vice versa. A woman might have a husband that she doesn't necessarily like, right? A job, or whatever it is and shit like that, right? Or a body they don't like, or whatever it is and shit like that, right? But it's like these things already solidified into the solid realm and shit like that, right? But for these things to truly go, for these things to truly leave, for a person to even stop generating these experiences through different people, places, and things and shit like that, right? Because it's a familiar spirit that a person has familiarized themselves with, right? So for a person to get away from these things, you have to just edit, you have to modify, you have to clear out what's on the mind as a pattern and shit like that, right? And when a person no longer views reality like that, they will no longer participate with the reality like that in the fashion or in the way that attracted these people, places, and things in the first place, right? And these things will just go on their own. These people, places, and things will go on their own, because it's like when you change your mindset, your state of being and shit like that, right? And you no longer resonate with the states of being that created these things in the first place. These things will not be able to participate with you, where these things will just kind of go on their own. The external people, places, and things will just go on their own and shit like that, right? So it's like it's interesting, because it's really like, it's really just like going through this destruction. It's not really a destruction. It's really just letting go of a bunch of shit that no longer serves you, because it's not generating the experiences that you want to experience and shit like that, right? And then when a person lets go of these things that do not serve them, then there's room inside of them to construct something new. Because now we're talking about like the Saturn energy, where everyone has a system for their reality, right? People that go to jail, they have a system on how to go to jail. Like they leave jail. I had a buddy who was a cop. He was telling me like, the inmates in jail would tell him like, yeah, we're going to be back here next week, because they didn't have another plan. They didn't have another system. So the only plan they had on their mind is to go back to jail subconsciously, where they was going to go do a crime and then come back to jail, because that's the only thing they've known. So it's like they familiarized themselves with it. They made that normal to them, and then they keep on re-experiencing it, because that's what their mind is fixated on, right? Where a person has to learn to mutate and adapt to something new, so they can initiate something new, right? Usher in something new, so then they can fixate in whatever that newness is. So it's really like a cycle, a mental cycle that a person is in, that attracts other cycles that resonate with it and shit like that. Because for a person to be in jail, you have to resonate with something to put you in jail. But I'm not even saying like you have to be a bad person to be in jail, because a lot of people running the world, they be bad, quote unquote, if you want to call them bad people and shit like that, right? But since they run the system, they don't have to be in jail because they create the laws and shit like that, right? So it's their system and shit like that, right? But that's what I'm saying. For you to even attract certain people, places, and things, you have to be in a certain mentality, a certain pattern and shit like that, for these things to even mix in together, even with thoughts and feelings, like certain vices, certain virtues. You have to be in a certain space to even have these temperaments on your mind, these mental temperatures and shit like that, right? Like you got to be in a certain space for these things, right? So if you just change, so a person really changes the space they're in, they're not gonna have to experience these realities that they keep on re-experiencing, reliving, where it just becomes like Groundhog's Day, where a person can be like, fuck, I don't want to experience this, I'm tired of this shit. But a person is so deeply rooted in that they don't know how to view reality from any other perspective. So it's like where that anger energy becomes very potent. But here's the thing though, sometimes people become so pissed off, so angry at the reality that they use the anger energy at the wrong time, wrong place. Because it's like they've let that build up on them. They let it swell up so much to the point that like it just comes out at the wrong time almost, where it can kind of fucking destruct their life even more. But it's not necessarily negative. It can be positive, but the anger energy itself is just very potent and shit like that, right? Where once you even experience that initial anger and shit like that, that just lets you know, okay, something has to transform, something has to change. And you know that Mars energy, that anger energy, has to do with like that pentagram, that 5-point, where it's very powerful because you can use it to powerfully transform something outside of you. Because so if you don't like something that's going on in your life, if you don't like how someone is treating you, if you don't like a shift at your job, feel free to use that anger and aggression energy, because it's gonna melt that situation. Because it's just a circumstance situation. It's a sphere of like reality, but that sphere of reality can be deconstructed if you just take that Martian energy, point it at it, and transform it, melt it. Where it's like that's where a metal esoterically speaking just means like a structure that is solid and shit like that. Like a form of practicality and logic that is much more denser and solidified. So a person may be under a system, but you can use that anger energy, that Martian energy, to transform something that needs to be transformed and shit like that, right? That's what I do like at work. That's what I do with like people, places, and shit. Things when it really come down to it, I hit it with the Mars energy, because I know it's gonna be potent. I know it's gonna be powerful. I know it's gonna be effective. See, that's the thing though. It's like a lot of people are scared of anger and aggression. A lot of people is thought to be nice. A lot of people is thought to be, oh, don't ruffle the feathers. No, it's like you want to ruffle the feathers. There's nothing wrong with that and shit like that, right? Because if you do that, where it's seen as negative, but it's really positive. Because it's seen as negative by the other person and shit like that, but it's really positive for you. So you can't a person can't sit there being worried about external people, places, and things. You got to put yourself first, because it's your life. No one's going to put you first other than you, right? So it's like, if like I said, if a person is generating experiences they don't like, also feel free to point that anger, aggression energy inward. Because a lot of the times, the only reason we're in these circumstances, situation outwardly, is because, you know, a mental pattern hasn't been changed. There's a wiring that allowed a person to, you know, wire themselves into that circumstance, situation, you know, flow into it, because where attention goes, where attention goes, energy flows and shit like that, right? So whatever a person wires themselves into, right, that's what a person is creating in their life. That's what a person is honing into. Is people is already honing into a certain mindset. People is already playing certain roles. People is already playing victim. People is already playing abuser and user and shit like that, right? Or narcissist, or whatever a person want to call it and shit like that, right? But these are roles that people are playing and shit like that, right? And when these two people meet and shit like that, right? Cops and robbers, when these two people meet and shit like that, they're going to create an experience situation. And then that's going to be the circumstance situation that a person experiences, you know, whatever it looks like for a person and shit like that, right? So that's the thing though. But like I said, the most important thing is to like really point that anger and aggression energy at yourself, because you shouldn't really have to hate anyone outside of you. You can really have anything you want to. You can do anything you want to, but it just all come with negatives and positives. There's positives to being the victim. You can be lazy. You don't have to believe in yourself. You can pretend like you have no power. Something outside of you is more powerful. There's benefits. Victims, more often than not, may like just being victims. It's just like, okay, I don't have to do anything about my life. Okay, I'm a victim. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's benefits to that shit, right? But a person that's a victor has to be able to handle more responsibilities, has to be able to handle more things. Where to a because like it's like the whole mentality of employee and CEO. You know, the CEO has to handle more shit than the employee. The employee is comes, clocks in, leaves. You know, it's like a different mentality. It's they're both on two different times. That's why you hear, you know, demon time and angel time and shit like that. It just depends on what time you're on. Because the time you're on, that's the shit that's gonna create the reality that you're living and shit like that, right? So, you know, it's like that and shit, right? So look at the experiences you're generating, and if you don't like these experiences, clear out the energies, the thoughts, things that's on the mind that's generating that experience and shit like that, right? Then you can approach these things from a much more lighter perspective where you can start to experiment and try out new possibilities, new angles, you know, without necessarily the mentality that holds you back from actually participating with these things much more freely. Because people are just stuck into density of mind, density of thinking, density of feeling, density of a mental pattern. And that mental pattern is going to be the same thing that doesn't allow you to get out of those experiences. Because a person genuinely believes those thoughts and feelings. A person genuinely believes they have to live life that way. But that's just not true. That's just what the mind convinces you got to do based upon whatever program a person has been given or a person has been told to play out. You know, a lot of these things is given by people around us in our environment, family, you know, just upbringing, depending on what land you was raised in and shit like that. What's the likes and the dislikes of that particular land and shit like that, you know. And yeah, you know, so it's gonna be up to you to take power and control of your life, right? Certain things in the mind have to die, have to go through death, have to transform, aka that Pluto energy, where a person gotta really take power and control and transform these things, rather than allowing the external to take power and control and transform you, because eventually the world will put you, the universe will put you, your spirit, yourself will put you through an extreme situation, so you could be like, damn, I'm tired of this shit. I don't want to do this no more. That's why you see a lot of people quitting their jobs, because people don't want to do these jobs. But again, it's like what got a person from point A to point B. It was a certain belief in that external degree. But you know, if you bought this shit, you're going to get these God degrees, these sun degrees, these moon degrees and shit like that. But with that being said, that's another video for another time. That's all I wanted to say for today. I'm going to see you all on tomorrow's motherfucking video. Peace.